these are Raphael brushes. You can see that. It says Raphael right there. Okay. And then I have my Escada brush. This one is Escada number 4. And this is a cat's tongue because it's kind of like a filber, but it kind of comes together kind of sort of like a cat's tongue. Then I have this one that actually says cat's tongue. This one is a Renaissance. It has a gold tip on it. And this one is a flat right here, number 8. And I like it. It has this nice embossed on it. And it says cat's tongue. So these are some of my favorite brushes from when I get to this stage on this size painting. I also use another set of brushes I like to use. It's called Rosemary. These are from UK, from England. And these are some very nice brushes here. This company, Rosemary, she makes her own brushes by hand. Some of the best brushes on the planet. Actually, these 3 brushes, the Raphael, the Renaissance, and Rosemary, and Escado. Some of the best brushes on the planet. Now, they're not the best brushes, but, you know, I think there's about maybe 10 or 20 top companies, and these 3 brands are from some of the top companies. I have other brushes as well, but for this particular level where I'm doing a lot of layers and I'm doing a lot of stains, I like to use these brushes. Of course, I have my palette together, so I have all my colors on it. I have titanium white, zinc white. I have cadmium yellow lemon. I have cadmium yellow medium, cadmium yellow light, I should say. Cadmium yellow medium, cadmium orange, cadmium red medium. I have burnt sienna. I have alizarin crimson. I have Daxodon purple. I have raw umber, emerald green. I have viridian green. I have sap green. I have some teal blue, which is kind of like a baby blue. And I also have cerulean blue and cobalt blue and ultramarine blue. And I'm using Mars black. So that's kind of like my palette, my standard palette that I like to have. And yes, I like to have a lot of colors. Not that I use all of the colors in every session. I just like to have them on a standby. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and and start modeling on the hands, featuring on the hands, and then a little bit on the eyes as well. Okay? So to get the hand, I really want to focus on the hands because, like I see this, I got, especially this one, I have a brush, and right here, I kind of have a little bit more of a rough brush style that I've done. And so I'm going to start with my Raphael, number 6. And this is a flat, or shucks, it might be so worn, it might be a filber by this point, but it's a bright. Okay, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start with some of the lighter tones. I'm going to mix those first. And I already have a tone that has a little bit of like raw umber in it. I'm going to add a little bit of cadmium orange. And I'm adding medium to this as I'm mixing this color just to get a nice flesh tone. I'm going to get some cadmium yellow light. And that's going to kind of make a peach tone. Even though she's African American, what I'm going to do is add a little sap green. And this is going to be the highlight color for her. And so, and that's what when I start with my mixing, I start with my highlight color. And I like that for a nice highlight color. Okay? So I'm going to just make this color a little bit more bolder. Some more sap green. Get some more cadmium yellow light. Get a little bit more cadmium orange. And add some more white to it. Because I'm gonna want more of this color than what I have on my palette. Okay, now from this color, I'm gonna make this slightly darker tone. I'm gonna go ahead and pre-mix this. I'm gonna grab some yellow ochre and add it to that. And I'm looking for that medium color there's not really the highlight, it's just the next color after the highlight. And I'm using the color that I mix. And I'm mixing that color into the yellow ochre to get that color. So I have a tendency to do that a lot. I build first my lightest color, then I go for the next color. Then I'm going to get back to this yellow ochre for my next color, still having some of that initial beigeish color. I'm going to add a little bit more sap green to it to get the medium tone on her hands. And this is a brown, but it's a brown with a lot more green in it. And it's more yellow ochre with sap green in it. Okay? Now I'm going to start going to the colors that lean to brown. And I'm going to have still that, now I'm going more to the cadmium orange. And then I'm going to add just a little bit of raw umber in this color. Add just a little bit more raw umber. Okay, and that's very nice. So now I have that. And now I'm just going to go straight to burnt sienna. I'm going to have a whole lot of burnt sienna now. And this is like the warm medium colors that's in the hand. And I started out, and I still have some of that initial tone in the brush. And what I'm trying to do is get all that. And it's not, this is no longer burnt sienna that I have. It's a lighter color with some of these other colors in. So all these colors are kind of analogous to each other. They kind of agree. And then finally, I'm going to take the burnt sienna and I'm going to add some viridian. I mean, some alizarin crimson in the burnt sienna to make that really rich kind of magenta-y brown. Okay. And once I have that color, I don't really need a lot of that color, so I'm going to skip over. I usually would mix some Doxodon purple, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to use that just kind of like this, to lean it cool. Then I'm going to get some raw umber, and I'm going to mix it into that reddish brown that I just have for the darkest tone of brown. And that's basically my flesh tones for her hand that I have. So I have this light color here. If you can see that, I have this light color. And, and I don't want to spill my medium on myself. I have this light color here. Then it gets a little bit darker, a little bit darker, a little bit darker, a little bit darker. And it gets redder. And these are this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different tones that's in my flesh color that I like to paint. Yvette Smith, how you doing? How you doing? Oh my gosh, the painting is beautiful. Thank you, Yvette. This is my modeling layer that I have on. And I'm going to do a modeling layer now on, I'm going to focus on this hand here because I haven't done a modeling layer on this hand at all. This is my blocking layer that's on this hand. So I'm going to start out and show you kind of how I model, because I have a modeling layer on the face. I need to kind of darken her eyes a little bit because her actual eyes is a little bit darker than that. But I kind of wanted her to have a glow. So I kind of kept it light just so I can work with that glow. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out. So now I have that darker tone on this brush. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to my Raphael brush, but this time instead of a number 6, I'm going to get a Filbert number 4 Raphael brush. And I'm going to go back to that light tone. And I'm going to find all the little highlight areas. And I like to start with the lightest light. Now already that light color is kind of nice. It's kind of what I want, but it's not exactly what I want. So what I'm going to get is get some more white. And I'm going to lean this color to a kind of like a pinkish brown. So I'm going to add some alizarin and some raw umber. And I'm going to get a ton of white. And what I have is this like purplish looking color here. And so I'm not going to use that color. And I kind of use my brush kind of like as a palette. So now I can't use that particular brush yet. So I'm going to get another brush, my Escada brush, number 4. And this is a cat's tongue, Escada, however you want to pronounce it. I pronounce it like a English. I guess I should pronounce it like Spanish. Escoda brush, I'm sorry. Escodo brush. Escoda, I'm sorry, forgive me. I'm just mutilizing. Made in Barcelona, Spain. Okay. And then once I have that tone, I'm going to just kind of lay this tone right where I see it. And what I'm doing is, this is my modeling layer. I'm just adding another layer to this. And I see this color on these two fingers that's holding the strawberry. And it's really more white than pinkish. And what I'm doing now is, now that I got the color mix, I'm really not trying to add any more medium to it. I'm just trying to get as much. It's a modeling layer, but it has to cover. I don't want this to be a glaze yet, because I really don't have, once I have a modeling layer, then I just add glazes. But since I don't have glazes yet, since I don't have a modeling layer, I don't want to really start glazing. So what I'll do is what I'm doing is I'm looking for colors. I'm trying to mix, I'm trying to mix exact colors. As exact as I can get it, I suppose. And just trying to lay those colors in where they should live, you know? And so, because that's what the whole purpose, and I'm trying to work with some opaque, so I'm working with titanium white, because I do want these to be, this modeling layer to be opaque. I want the paint to have some body and thickness to it. And I'm just laying this tone in everywhere where I see it on my little mock-up drawing here. Okay, so, and I want to keep my brush pure to that tone, so I'm going to retire that brush for now. I'm going to get a clean brush. And I might have to recruit some more of these brushes here. So these are more cat's tongues. This is a round and a cat's tongue, and this is the Renaissance sables. So I'm going to get this guy right here, because I do want, at this level of painting, I want the brushes to be somewhat small. Okay, now I'm going to go to this kind of like yellowy highlight tone, because that lives right beside this kind of pinkish looking. And I'm just going to pop those in where I see them. And I'm going to try to focus those in and get those tones started. And I don't really want to put a tone that's too light down where it's not that light at. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is just start covering some of this finger here as much as I can with this lighter tone. Where I see it. I'm not going to just paint just for painting's sake. I'm going to put the tone down where I see it. When I really was blocking the canvas, I just put a rough tone down. I wasn't trying to get it exact. I was just trying to get something that looked like the finger, as fast possible, painted as possible. And at this level, I'm not really mixing a lot of medium in the paint. I'm trying to put the paint in as thickly as possible, but not too thin yet. I'm not really going for any impasto or brush strokes just yet. I'm going to kind of save that for when I get, you know, it's like dessert. You know, it's like when you're doing the modeling layer, it's kind of like eating your vegetables. You know, you want to kind of get your structure. You want to get the structure of your painting in terms of values. And the modeling layer is values, I should say. What I do is I focus on exactly how dark every tone's supposed to be and where. And so what up? And I'm just trying to look for certain tones and place them where they should be in the composition, in what I've modeled. And also it's required, now that I have the color mixed, I do remix all the time. I add more white because I'm using the paint, so I'm running out. So I keep these little puddles of paint, these colors, these values. Once I know the recipe, I'm constantly, you know, updating my little palettes, my little colors. Sometimes people just mix these big swatches of color, and I think that's just such a waste. And I know how to kind of economize my paint without having to put out such a big, huge, and a lot of times for demonstration purposes, people are showing off and they just put way too much paint out. They paint a little tiny picture. It's a waste, I think. You know, I just rather the paint go on the canvas. I don't want to show off just putting it on the palette. The way I see it, if I can't put that paint on the canvas, it don't count. And to have a little bit more ease of use, I mean, it's wasteful. And I love the colors, I love the tones, and I hate wasting them. Because I have respect for my tones, I don't really like, the idea of wasting them does not appeal to me, let's put it that way. Okay, and so now what I'm doing is going back and forth between light and darks. I'm still focusing on the lighter colors, but if you focus on the lighter colors too much, what you start doing is you start losing the modeling. You start losing what you're doing. You start getting lost. So I don't want to get lost. I just want to throw down my lighter tones first to kind of have something to blend into when I get to the darker tones. Now I'm going to go back to my darker tones with that brush that I originally set up. And I'm just going to kind of go in, and this brush is a little bit too big, so even though I have my darker tones, I'm going to find just a slightly smaller brush. And do I have the small? Here we go. And I'm going to use my number 2 Cat's Tongue Escada and work with that. Hey, how you doing, Yvette Smith? I appreciate you coming by again today. I really appreciate it. And now I'm coming in with this darker tone that I mixed, which is raw umber, a little alizarin crimson, and some burnt sienna. That's basically what I'm working with here. Keeping my colors kind of warm and hot, because I do like my colors. And what I'm doing is with this dark color, I'm going around the perimeter of all my shapes where they're going to be dark, so that when I start blending these shapes, because the modeling is about blending, this modeling layer is going to be about blending. So you want to blend the lights into the darks, the medium into the darks. Everything is going to go into the darks. So you want to put down your lights, but then you want to put down your darks. And I already have this nice little field of black around her. Which is good. And really, is her hand, I don't want black in here because it's going to really start to muddy up my nice, I like my colors to kind of sing. I like my colors to really glow. And the way you do that is keep the black out at this level. You know, my darkest tone is going to be that raw umber. And what I do is I add a little dioxazine purple to make it darker, as opposed to adding black to make it darker, if I need a little bit more darkness in the shadow. Now I'm going in here, and now on this side of the hand, it's kind of like where the dark side of the hand is. So I'm actually having to apply this tone more into that hand than anywhere else. But eventually I'm going to move up, because I like to kind of move from my dark to my light. So eventually I am going to move up into, and again, I keep my little puddles of tone consistently the same tone, but I'm constantly building back and adding into that. And I just, like now, I'm moving this darker tone into those medium tones that I have earlier put on the canvas. And so instead of just working left to right, I just like to splash the colors all over to get some paint down where I want it. And then now what I'm going to do is kind of back up. I'm going to back up to and add what I call the heat. And that's the one with the alizarin, kind of like a reddish brown. And just put some warmth into some of this brown. And right now I only see that warmth really on the sides of the fingers. I don't really see it a lot. I don't really see it a lot in the middle part. It's just a little bit of that alizarin or warmish kind of color, and that's burnt sienna, alizarin crimson. A little bit of raw umber is in there, but a little bit also of yellow ochre and a little bit of cadmium orange is in there as well. And that's just a little bit of a warmer, it's like a warmer reddish brown that I'm working with. It's like a reddish brown, purplish, reddish kind of brown. Okay, and I don't really have a lot of that, so I'm gonna get off of that right now. I see a couple of little places where I can add it down here in the wrist area. That's it. And I see some little fine places around the top of the finger where I can just add just some little hints of that tone. So I'm going to kind of go in there with that. All right, that gives me something to blend into. I'm also going to go around this finger with this. And sometimes I'm imagining these colors. I mean, I actually don't see the color anywhere. I'm just putting it in because I think it might look good. I'm using my experience as a painter to know where I can put some paint at that make it better than what I see in any picture example. So I don't always just religiously follow whatever the photograph example I'm looking at. Now I'm going back to this orangey tone where I'm using a lot of cadmium orange, and I'm using it with a bit of burnt sienna and a little bit of raw yellow ochre. And this tone I'm going to put right beside that tone, and I'm going to drag this color a little bit more into the actual finger, the middle of the finger, next to those lighter tones. Is where I'm going to put this. Now this is a little bit orangey, and what I'm going to do is add a little bit of burnt sienna to it to kind of cut it back so it's not so bright, but it still has sing to it. And I'm going to go right to that purplish color, and I'm just going to lay some of this color right beside that. And I do like having some zing in my colors. I like to have that nice. Now I'm going to get off of that as fast as I can. And there's another tone that I didn't quite see that I'm going to mix. It has yellow ochre in it, and it has some sap green in it. But it has some of that orange. And since I already have that mix, I'm just going to add some more sap green to it. And it's really making like a green, a much more greener version of yellow ochre, and a little bit darker towards a burnt sienna. Because that is actually the main mid-tone. That's my really main color, and I don't even know why I didn't add that first. And I'm going to just lay that in, because that's a lot of places I can actually put that color. And so what I'm going to do is make a lot more of that, because I see that in a lot of places there. Okay, and I'm going to try to put that in somewhat thick. Somewhat thick. Because, like I said, my modeling layer, this is not just my blocking layer. My blocking layer is just to get rid of the white, so I'm not painting on the white ground. And this layer, what I do with this one, this is actually, I'm really defining the values, the way the light is hitting, the way the light is hitting the object. You know, and I'm working with color and values. Not just with the values, but also with the color and values at the same time. Oftentimes I'll be squinting my eyes in this layer just so I can see how the light is hitting the object. And I did move the camera closer in this session to give you guys a chance to kind of see a little bit more closer what I do when I'm painting. And also you get a better understanding of what I'm painting. Like when Yvette kind of saw, she go, oh wow, okay. She can see more. So she gets a better understanding. And maybe perhaps I'll start teaching, you know. So it's good that you guys, if you want to have me teach you, I'll be more than happy to do that. So I don't mind giving you some preliminary understanding as to what my technique is anyway, on how I paint, you know. And I paint according to, I like to paint the old master style, high fine art style. I don't paint like the conventional style that some people paint, you know, left or right. It's just, it looks photographic or photorealistic, but there's no patina, there's no buildup of paint, there's no brush strokes, it's, you know, I want this interesting on multiple layers. I want brush strokes, I want the brush strokes to look good all by itself. And now I'm coming in with some much heavier whites on those highlight areas and starting to really almost sculpt that in. And I'm almost not putting any medium at all in into that white. I'm just basically just laying that in there. And I'm gonna go back to this, get some more yellow ochre for this first color, and I'm getting a lot more sap green. I mean, cadmium yellow medium with titanium white and sap green. I see a lot more of that tone now in here. So let me just get those tones where I see it. See, sometimes you don't see all the tones right away. Sometimes you do. And it depends on what levels of subtlety you're looking for. Okay, now once I have enough of these tones in, what I'll start doing now is, this is when I get down with my modeling. And I think I'm going to use this brush for this. And what I'm doing is I'm looking now to blend more one tone with the next and smooth out these tones more. Because right now this is very rough. I mean, if I look at it on the screen, I will see it's kind of rough. So we don't want it so rough. So what we want to do is smooth out where one tone hits the next, looking at the example. And paint it on in there. And this is where we get into some of the modeling. And then here, all of my tones that I have pre-mixed, I'm just dabbing a little bit and just throwing it on straight off the palette. Because now I have so many different varieties mixed, I can always find exactly what I want in terms of laying it on there. And now my brush strokes are moving in various directions. I don't want to just move in one direction, because really I'm trying to define the way the light hits it And the light just is everywhere. These little light hits the molecules and fractures in multiple directions. So your brush should kind of echo that kind of thing that's happening. Okay, so now that's starting to, I'm starting to get that in and starting to get a good understanding of what I'm doing with that. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to go back to this little flat brush here. It doesn't have anything on it. I believe this is just a, it might be a filbert, it might be a little bright flat brush. And it really, I don't even need paint at this level on the painting. What I'm doing now is I'm just blending the tones in and modeling what I have, because I got the main colors on the actual canvas. Then every now and then, if I need to pick up something, I know I have exactly a place on my palette where I can pick it up. I'll just pick that color up. Then I'll just add it to the blend. I'm focusing on a ring finger. Oh, that's right. She gave me a picture of a ring, a diamond ring that I'm going to add on one of these fingers. And as a matter of fact, that would be on this finger. So before I paint too much, let me pull that up. Let me just go ahead and add that bad boy in. I think I have that picture on my phone. You can see I'm painting this light color, but I don't have enough dark around it to model it. So I'm going to add some more dark tone here. And you can see once I add the dark, I have that nice ability now to model the light or the colors. And for the most part, I'm painting wet onto dry, because this first, I started out, everything was dry. And everything I added is wet. And I'm taking that wet tone and I'm just adding it in. I know the ring is not going to be on the middle finger, so I'm going to go ahead and just, because I'm feeling the blend right now, and I don't want to get out of that. I'm going to add the ring a little bit later. I'm going to jump on this middle finger a little bit, kind of get that blend going in that. Get this blend going some. I hope I didn't come in too late today. Coming off all those birthdays and all of the family stuff. I kind of have a big family, got a lot of friends. So I got, and I'm a talker. I like talking. So people calling me up, I'm chit-chatting and laughing. And just, trying to keep the quality of people and friends high, keep that good. I don't want to just be painting all the time and leaving my friends behind. Just all I know how to do is paint. No, I like dealing with folks too, And I'm sure there's things I should be doing that I didn't do. Because, it's just so much, you're juggling between your painting, you're juggling between your businessy stuff, and you're juggling between your family stuff. Okay, now once I have this paint somewhat wet on wet, I can start adding various tones. Now I'm going to go back in wet on wet and add some darker tone into this blend where I see that. So at some point you switch from painting a wet on wet mode to painting more of a wet on dry mode to a wet on wet mode. Because you've been in this session for a minute, you're losing areas of the painting that is dry, where you can put wet paint onto dry. So I'm blending those tones that I had adjacent, the light and the mediums and the highlights, getting all those to kind of sort of start agreeing. And I'm most able to get a lot done with this number 6 bright sable brush, my Raphael brush. I'm able to get a lot of work done with this. And this is tending to be here lately one of my favorite brushes, the number 6 and the number 4, both the filber and the brights. I'm just picking up tones where I see it off the palette and just dropping them in because I have enough wet down there to blend into. I have enough dark to blend into. Of course, you can kind of scumble wet on the dry, but you have to literally paint wet on the wet. But the painting starts to look more beefy, the flesh starts looking more fleshy when you do get those wet tones in. Because you can put those in, you can sculpt that paint in a lot thicker. You can sculpt the paint in. Literally, I consider it sculpting the paint in. I mean, you can draw paint, you can sculpt paint, because painting is a form of drawing, but painting is also a form of sculpt. It's all related. These things aren't separate. I know what people have done is they separated them, But they really are, in my opinion, the way I work with it anyway, inseparable. And sometimes you can make your little tones a little bit too dark. That's okay. And I do that sometimes on purpose so that I could come back in as a subsequent color and then kind of like blend it backwards, because maybe a color I have over there is too light. So sometimes I go too dark to make the too light tone better, Like I said, oftentimes you one step forward, 2 steps back, You jostle it around. In other words, you get to see different looks. So there's no such a thing as making a mistake. You might paint something too dark, too light, because that gives you a different look. And you might say, ooh, but I like it pushed. I like the light highlights pushed up. Or you might like the dark tones pushed down. Or you might like your medium tones tinted a slightly different way. But if you never actually put something on there that might not be exactly perfect, you'll never get that different look. You'll never get that option. Because what you're trying to do is make everything perfect the way you see it. And that's good, you know, like if you're a beginner painter, it's good to do that because you're getting used to seeing where your tones are. You're getting used to, you know, you want to see where your stuff is, you know, in your painting. But also, you don't get any discovery if you do not enough of that. There's no discovery. Okay, I'm gonna use basically a dry brush with nothing on it now, just to kind of blend a little bit and knock down some of these blends, get them softer. This is a sable filber with some pretty long hairs on it. And a lot of times the more you model and push something around without adding without adding anything to it, it stiffens the paint on the, it's kind of drying the paint a little bit on the actual canvas. And I think it actually caused the painting to dry faster. And therefore you can paint with some wetter paint or some stiffer paint back into that. And instead of that paint coming up, the paint has a tendency that the tones have a tendency to stay the way they are. And then also it gives you an opportunity to make some more evenly toned instead of you know, harsh differences in the tones. The tones blend a little bit more even. Gives an opportunity to even out some of that. Because what you're doing is you're picking up colors that's already existing on the canvas, and what you're doing with those is just kind of blending those in, or just putting one color into the other color, making them more the same as opposed to less. So they don't just have like individual islands into themselves on your canvas, and now what I'm doing is kind of dry brushing some of these tones into some of the paint, the block coat that I already have down. I'm gonna pick up some of this where I really put the paint down heavy. I'm gonna go in some darker tones here, kind of paint that back in. And what this is doing is I'm kind of mixing on the screen, and it's allowing me to kind of go into this wrist here and just add just a little bit more luminosity to kind of let that come forward just a smidge, to add a little bit more body to this dark tone. I'm just picking up tones that's already in the hand and just trying to create a little bit of body. And so it looks dark, but it doesn't quite, I mean, it's a little bit of light hitting in there. So there we go. And that's a little bit more modeled than it was. And what I'm gonna do is just some places where my little pinky finger sometimes drag on a previously painted color. I'm just gonna kind of wipe some of that up with this little tissue paper here. Because that's nicely toned. I might add something toward the end of the painting session today to get that going. Now I have a paint brush with something on it. I'm gonna just go into Gamsol and just kind of clean the paintbrush, and then I'm gonna get the excess Gamsol off the brush So the brush is not totally dry, but the brush is fairly dry. And what this is allowing me to do is just between different colors, where there's a light and maybe a brown, just to do some little subtle blends. I just don't want a too harsh of a difference just yet. Don't want that just yet. Like I say, just paint these. I'm kind of, some areas I'm actually glazing. Well, model glazing as well. Just adding little thin coats just to add it, bring up the light just a little bit. Bring up the light in those tones, or bring down the tone. Whatever it is, just bringing it up just a little bit at a time. And that's a technique that's called glazing. And sometimes I'm just getting just a little bit of medium, no paint, working with what's already down there, and just trying to create something. And then sometimes I have to go into a straight color like alizarin, or a little bit of cadmium red in alizarin, and just mix a little orange or something, just something in there to add a little glow, just a little bit of more warmth of color, or sometimes coolness of color. Depends on what I think I need to see, you know, and build that into what I'm working with. Matter of fact, I like that little, I'm gonna get some of that cadmium red. I kind of like that little glow. I'm gonna go around the knuckles because I see a little glow, a specular fall off right through there. Put that little warmth of orangey, reddy, purpley thing around where that specular fall off happens. I see some more of that happening. And I'm just touching it with this nice soft filber. This is my Renaissance brush, number 8. Just add a little warmth to some of these tones where I feel it. And I'm basically, I guess I'm doing it logically, but you know, I painted enough I can just feel where I need the colors to go. So I'm painting by feelings to some level. And you can see, based on a very crude gestural type paint I had before, the paint is starting to model. The modeling is start coming forward. And when I'm painting the face, I'm doing the same thing. I'm starting to model. And you can see this arm is not modeled yet. This is starting to get modeled. This is not me finished modeling. This is just me starting in. I'm going in with the modeling. Beautiful artist, great artist, did a nice render with a ballpoint pen on paper because she ran out of paint. See, so an artist is not just a person who can paint good. Artist is also a business person. Because you mess the business part up, you're out of business, you can't make art. That happened to me before. I was doing good. I had my own art thing going, my own art place. Nice square footage up in there. Not to say, yeah, you know, I had to scale out. I had to scale down a different way. And plus, also, you got Corona, you got to scale. A lot of times, you got to eat some humble pie, you know. When you make mistakes, you know, when you don't use, you know, you can say, I just want what I want. I want it now. And I want it big. And I want it nice. Well, at the same time, you want to be able to continue to do it into the future. You want to be able to do it a long time, you know, for the rest of your career, 20, 30 years down the road. You want to still be able to do it. Okay, so if you want to do that, you have to make that up in your mind, and then you have to say, okay, what do I need to do to sustain this? I mean, I have to have some very prudent business tactics that I use. so that I can be able to afford everything that I need to afford, so I can keep the lights on, keep the doors open, keep my materials. I mean, if an artist don't have paint, a painter don't have paint, he can't paint. He can't make art. If a sculptor doesn't have marble, he can't make marble sculpture or bronze. You know, you got to buy those things first before you can make anything. So it's very important to to be a good business person. Just as good of a business person as you are. Now, what I'm doing is I'm on this left side now. My palette's way over here, so I have to spin all around in different positions and whatnot. And I don't want to do all that spinning. So what I'm going to do is move my palette a little bit more so that I can get to what I need to get to easier. And I'm already seeing tones in this that I really wasn't even looking for before, so I shouldn't even say that I didn't see before, because it wasn't the time to look for them. So I wasn't looking for them, you know. And so I'm going to put some hint tones down here of what I want to do. And where I have my brushes at should be where my palette is. So I'm going to scoop these brushes over some. Pick up my palette and scoop my palette over. You guys probably can't see that because I have things kind of focused in on the painting, so you can see that. Kind of have my head tucked out of the way so you can see that too. And this is a better position because the painting is nice and close. Okay. So you should be able to see this painting a lot better than even some of the other paintings I've been doing. Maybe I should have been doing this a long time ago. Well, finally figured that out, I guess. And what I'm doing is trying to stay accurate to what I see as much as possible. I didn't paint this as accurate when I was gesturing it down. So sometimes when you do that, it's harder to get it more accurate later because you have to come from such a different position to get it accurate again, you know. And so what I'm doing is just trying to look at these tones, see where they live at, sort of, and then pop them in there. And some of these tones kind of continue. So again, get these tones and continue them, you know. Continue these bad boys. Continue these bad boys, man. Okay. And so what I'm doing is I started with the dark, so I'm going to opposite. Then I had the dark medium tones, and now adding the light tones in. So like I did with the other hand. And I have quite a few tones in here. I'm kind of looking to see where some of these tones live more so. And then I'm going to start kind of blending these tones in. Of course, it's great because I already have some tones down that I like. I already have some really nice tones down. Let me get this brush cleaned up because I really like this brush. And, okay, what do I want to do with the brush though? I just picked it up. And then I had so much on my brain that I can say I forgot what I wanted to do, but can't do everything at once, can you? Sometimes even the light in your studio, You try to get the light in your studio as even as possible so you can see everything. You don't want anything too intense, because that's going to put glare in places you don't really want glare, because you need to be able to see without glare. And then you want it bright enough so you can see, but you don't want it so bright that it's influencing how you see values, because you want to be able to still see values the right way. So you make it too bright, your pictures tend to be dark when you get it in different light, you know. If your studio is too dark, your pictures tend to be too light and wispy. Then when you get in a different light, your pictures look light and wispy. So you kind of got to have sort of like a gauge, you know, where I say, I know no matter what light I paint in, that this painting is to this or that, and I know the way I'm making these values, this painting is going to be too dark or too light, you know. You kind of have to get a feel for that, you know. You get a little feel for it. So whenever you kind of stray into those areas where you're getting too dark or too light, you can correct, you know, you can correct your where you're going. I'm getting some Doxodon purple and some burnt sienna. I'm starting to go into the dark shadows with it. I already had the mediums there. I came back with some highlights, and I'm using those colors for the darks now over this side. And I don't want the darks on this side to be too dark, because this side is the darker side of the painting. This side is actually the lighter side. But really the light's coming straight in on her. So, but generally I like to have a side where the light is kind of coming from. I kind of like this, pick a side. And since I'm left-handed and I'm left vision, I guess, which sometimes my paintings look different from right-handed people, and it may look odd to people who, the right-handed world kind of people, you know, because I might see things, I'm not going to say mirror image, but the opposite, you know, in terms of the strong side of the painting, the weak side of the painting. People read left to right. Well, I live in a right-handed person's world, so I have a tendency to paint left to right because I live in a right-handed person's world. However, I have a tendency also at the same time, since I'm left-handed, to see things from a left-handed point of view. And so I can go right to left, just as easy as I can go left to right. Which, in a way, it might give me a little bit of advantage of a person who just only goes left to right because they're right-handed. Essentially, what that has caused me to have a style where I just go all over the place randomly. I don't have to be left to right, right to left, or any particular kind of linear fashion, up to down. I just would get all over the place because I've been bouncing and seeing things so different. I'm just constantly, you know, seeing things differently, so that there is no real left to right thing going on, or right to left thing. I mean, to some extent it is going on, but quite a bit of it isn't. What I'm doing now is kind of using this large, well, not large, but it's a number 6, but a large hair filber. And I guess this is a cat's tongue filber. And I'm basically going in with a light color, but I'm using it kind of as a blend brush and blending between some of these more harsh colors that I already have down here, and just kind of establishing how this forearm, like where the fall off and the specular highlight comes around on this forearm. Okay. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move up a little bit more. Move up a little bit more. And I'm painting wet on to dry to some level with this. And kind of doing a slight dry brush, but a lot of this is wet on the wet also. So sometimes I run to an area that's wet on the dry, then I go run right straight to wet on the wet, and I just switch different kinds of painting modes just on the fly as I feel it underneath the brush. And that, a lot of that comes just with painting. You just get used to feeling. You paint a lot, you just feel it. You just know it. You just do it kind of automatically. You know, it's done automatically. Okay, so just get a little bit more. Get another modeling level. Getting a modeling level over top this block level, because and you can see where, I don't know where that tone came from, but I must have painted that wet on wet in there. That's a light color that just popped in on, came up somehow to the surface as I was blending. And you do have that, you have colors that's in the surface, you have colors that's underneath, and if you blend, you can pull colors that you had pushed underneath or put something over top. You push those colors to the kind of to the fore, so to speak. Okay, so now what I'm not gonna really mess with the jewelry too much, because I can come back later with that and paint wet on the dry a little bit more with that, because that's a different element. And so I can kind of, I have some paint down, some block paint down, and that's all I'm really concerned about with that for the time being. So that's all good there. But what I do want to do is kind of build up some tone just a little bit. Build up some of my tone. When I say tone, build up some of my paint, I should say. So that my paint looks interesting, you know, it looks thick. It don't look like any wimpy, wispy paints there. It looks like something that's been put down deliberately, and it's like, you know, I like to think of it like you're putting icing on a cake, and you just smooth that thing on over, and it's thicker, you know, that thick icing. You know, you can almost taste the ice is nice and thick. You go, oh yeah, I want that piece of that thick ice, you know. And so sometimes when you're painting putting your paint on, you're putting it down like that. It's like, ooh, I can taste it. I just want it to feel like something tastes, you know. Really nice and on there. Not anything wispy, not anything wimpy, but something really nice and on there. Soften that up some. Soften. Soften, soften, soften. Same thing up here, just a little bit more softer. There, that's nice. Okay? I'm going to soften some of this up before I build it back up. So sometimes that's what you do. You soft it, you build it. You soft it, you build it. Or you soft it and then you unsoft it and you make hard lines, because you're putting something back in and you're taking something back out. So it's this little to and fro that goes on. I also like this number 6 cat's tongue on my Renaissance as well. I like these, anything in it from 2 to 8. Actually, I like all of the sizes. This Renaissance brush, this is another brush I'm going to be buying more of, because I like it. I like the way it works. It works nice. Okay, I'm getting a little bit of titanium white, mixing it with a little bit of cadmium yellow medium, mixing with a little bit of cadmium yellow, cadmium orange, mixed with a little bit of yellow ochre. Cadmium yellow medium even. Mix it with a little bit of sap green. Just a smidge of sap green, just a little teeny tip. To kind of make a little, and I'm going to go in with this little tone, kind of glaze it over some stuff I've already done. Just hit this little tone right next to this kind of highlight in the palm area. Just hit that in there. Just hit it in. Then I'm going to lighten up some areas that I think I made a little bit too dark. And you can do that, you know. I mean, that's what this is all about. You just go in and you lighten stuff and you darken it, and you find those values. And that's basically what I'm looking for now. I'm looking for gradation in values at this point. And on the secondary level, I'm also looking for tones. But most importantly, right now, I look for all of them when I paint, but right at this moment, I'm looking for more than anything else is values. Just looking for those right now, mostly. And the values are getting more and more subtle. As I add modeling layers, the values that I look for become more, I'm not going to say harder to find, but you just got to, they're not hard to find. I mean, I can see them, but I purposely don't want to see all the values at certain stages. I just want to see the more obvious ones. And then at another stage, I switch my mode of seeing, purposely and consciously, and I start looking for more subtle tones that I wasn't really focusing on. And that's the whole key is focus. Not that I don't see them. I wasn't focusing on those tones before. Then I get to the point where, okay, I want to focus on these tones now. That these are just a little bit more subtle than the tones that I was thinking about and dealing with in times before. And again, you just build these tones up until you have the kind of tones you want. And it's great when you can do that wet onto dry, like you see me doing right now. I'm painting this wet light color into a dry color that's a little bit darker. That's in this. I'm kind of doing it as a semi-transparent, putting it on somewhat thinly. And what this is doing is it's causing some of the lighter tones to pop out of the darkness just a little bit more. Just a little bit more pop out. Just a little here and there. You don't want too much. And you know, like I say, this is different because I'm sitting in a chair, I'm stuck in a chair. It's not like the other one where I can stand up and I can walk away from the painting. Then I walk back over, then I walk away. This is a smaller painting, so, and then I'm filming and I'm kind of, everything is cramped up on me. So I'm kind of stuck in this chair right here. I keep saying it like that because I don't like being stuck in a chair like this. I like to be able to move around so I can put my head in different places, get different perspectives on what the painting looks like from different perspectives. And it's kind of limiting when you can't do that as much as you would like. And you would like to do it more. So what I'm doing is, in some of the darker tones, I'm going in with lighter tones and building up where those highlights are. building them up. Sometimes you break them down and you build them up. You break them back down, you build them back up again. You go back and forward till you got something you like. Keep going back and forward till you have something you like. And in the process of me doing that, I build up, you know, because even the way I'm putting this on, even though this oil takes a while to paint, some of it actually thickens and dries. So even when I paint in another layer, I'm actually putting a little bit more on top of what I've already have. And it's building up a nice, I say patina, but really I guess it's building up a nice paint layer, a nice modeling layer. And that's what you do. It's a little bit of a play on patience to get your paint to that level. It's also a play on your chemistry, how much medium you have in the paint. What type of paint? What's the dry time? I'm using Galkit with linseed oil. I could be using Stan oil, which is going to take a lot longer to do the same thing. And that's the reason I don't do it, because I don't want to take too long to do the same thing. I don't want to take too long doing that. I'm going into some of the warmer colors that I had earlier. And I'm touching back into some of them. And I'm kind of painting them in like it's a scumble, kind of as a glaze over top of colors that I've already established in there earlier. Some of it wet on wet, some of it wet on dry. Just to add a little bit more specular highlight to the skin tones. Add a little bit more glisten in there. Now, I don't want this too dry. I do want some medium in it because, you know, the palm is kind of translucent. No matter how dark your complexion is, when you look at your palm, it's a certain lightness or translucency to the skin. And, you know, everyone's different. But you want to observe what you have, what you're looking at. And you want to try to, at least I would like to, I usually like to, I should say, put that into my paintings to some level. Put it on in it. I'm going to go back to this darker tone because I see some darker tones on top of one of these fingers. I want to look carefully at my tones because I don't want to paint something too dark that ain't that dark. But I don't want it to be too light if it ain't that light either. Again, you want it to be right. So I'm going to get a little bit of yellow ochre, some burnt sienna, some raw umber. And I'm going to paint in a little glaze of this brown to kind of smooth that out some as I see that as well. Just to add another little tone right over the previous established tones that I have. Again, just one tone on top of the next tone is what I'm trying to do. And I like that little mix that I have. So let me find it again on my palette and play with it some more here. And I'm seeing a little kind of like a shadow pattern develop that I didn't paint yet. So I'm going to go into some more raw umber, a little Daxodon purple, and a little bit of burnt sienna with a little bit of yellow ochre. And there's a little pattern here that I haven't painted in I'm now seeing that's really just like a shadow on these knuckles here. And I'm going to kind of paint that in. Just going to kind of paint that in. And that's going to just give it a little bit more of three-dimensionality, because I'm defining this plane here, defining how that plane goes. Tone and tone in that thing. Be conscious of it. Where and exactly the quality of your shadows. Do they have a hard line? Do they have a softer line, a medium hard, medium soft? You know, how are these lines getting on this thing? Getting a little Exodon purple, ultramarine blue, a little black. And you get cut in. And some of these shadows just got to cut in. They got to get in there deep. And sometimes you understate them, and then you realize that no, that thing's got a lot of shadow. You understate it too much. You got to go in there and state a little bit more. Not to say to overstate. There are times when you do want to overstate. And you just got to know just how much, just how little. You know, how is that going to work in there? How you want that to go? You know? Exactly how you want this thing to go in here. How you want this thing to go in here? Yeah, I think I got that nice. I want to blend that tone down. I don't know if I want to get too detailed just yet today. It's come a long way, and sometimes you try to bring it too much wet on wet, and you just go too far. But again, that's a touch you got to develop too. just how much tone, darker shadow do you need? How much? Too dark, too light? All those things just got to keep working it, playing with it until it tells you what the right answer is. Okay, that's nice. Nice, nice, nice. Okay, I didn't use this brush yet. This is a very fine number 0 filber, cat's tongue, and my Escoda. I'm gonna use that to paint the diagonals in this earring. I'm gonna do a very dark gray for this earring, and there's these little designs, like little diagonals in this earring. I'm just going to go down and just paint these little guys. They're just little lines. It's going down like on a 45-degree angle. Okay. And there's like 2 rows of these things. And really this is almost like a black that I'm painting it in. It's almost too dark. The color that I'm actually seeing is not this dark. But what I also know is I can always go in and to add, I do know with reflective things, I can emphasize, I can overemphasize. If I make it darker than what it actually is, it's going to give it the illusion of more shimmer, or zing, or glitter, or bling bling kind of look. It just punches more. Now I'm going to go mix like a 50% gray, and maybe even like a 40% gray. And I'm going to do like this second set of diagonals in this earring that's behind that other one. I don't want that line to be as strong because that one's behind the other one. So by me making it not as strong, it appears as though it's behind. Okay, now using this same brush, I'm going to just wipe it off using my pants because I don't have my rag. Clean it in my Gamsol a little bit. And I'm going to go to this really dark black color. And it really doesn't even matter what I use at this point because it's jewelry. So I can make it, I like to keep jewelry like a neutral gray, but I'm going to mix some dioxazine purple in it and a little ultramarine blue to get it nice and cool. Now I'm going to go into this brooch tone. And I'm going to cut out the shadow with a very dark black. And that's going to make this jewelry kind of pop away a little bit more. And this is the little 0 filber. This little 0 filber here. Keep my brush somewhat liquidy so I can have a lot of control over the line and the placement of the tone when I'm making this. I don't want this to seem like a line because this is really a shadow that's separating the brooch from her skin. So I'm thickening it up so it looks like a shadow and not a line. But since it's so close, the edge on this is going to be really sharp. We're going to have a really tight fall off. Now, what it is that for some reason I did not paint this as neatly as I could have. So I'm going to have to go in and let this dry. And then what I'm going to have to do is repaint that white in. Now on this side, it's no shadow that much. So I want to put a very thin outline just to separate that just ever so slightly from the skin tone. And I like it when I don't have any paint from the ground level and I'm only painting on the art paint. When I say art paint, I'm talking about my paint that I mix in my canvas. I mean that I mix on my palette. I'm going back to that 40% gray and I'm going to mix like a 50% gray. Now with that, because I'm kind of doing the designs. I think these are diamonds in here. And I really want, the lines that making these diamonds are not black, they're gray. Okay, and I'm starting to make these diamond shapes with first little semicircles in this gray. And then I'm filling these with it's trying to get a thin line to make a full circle. I'm not really wanting a full circle because I'm going to use the negative shapes to finish the circle shape when I make the next row of diamonds come out. So now I'm going to go with the next row of diamonds. And I'm going to kind of paint like a diamond shape to make the negative shape. Then start off the next semicircle of diamonds. Just to get the next row nice and uniform and parallel. This painting a negative shape helps me get that in there. Sometimes I like painting with this little small filbert catch tone that comes to a nice point. Even better than painting with a round because it's just sometimes I feel, it depends on how I feel, like I'm getting more control over making the mark, making the line. Sometimes with a round, I feel like if I'm doing a long, stringy line, then I like the line. I like the round better. But if I'm doing these little, small little circular shapes like this, I like this little small catch tongue filber. It just provides a great amount of control. I'm again paint this negative space. I think I'm gonna mix a little bit more black in this. I'll make another one that's about 75% black. 75% gray. It's not quite black. It's not, but maybe it's more 50% gray. Somewhere between 50 and 70, I guess. Let's get a little bit more pronounced as we go out with these diamonds. At least in the negative space, the shadow space, I should say, between the diamonds. When I say negative space, I mean the space between. I'm basically trying to paint the space between the diamonds, not trying to paint a circle. But as it works out, you're really painting the shape of the actual diamond itself, but these are round diamonds. Okay, now once I got that level in, now these others on the outside, I don't know if these is, I think it's just another set of rounds. I'm gonna go back to this 40% gray, because these get a little lighter because they're bigger. So the whiteness of the diamond comes forward more. But I think I'm gonna just even add some more white to it and get like 25% gray here. And instead of going to this next row, I'm gonna just paint these outer diamonds, which are rather big, and that's going to establish where that next row is without making my rows appear to be too weird. However, I do want them to be even, so I think I'm going to paint both of those rows at the same time so I can control how these rows go in here. But I'm painting with about a 25 to 30% gray now. It's not very dark because you can barely see the outline of these larger type diamonds, the way it's hitting in the light. You can see it's more space, I think, between the smaller diamonds. So they're bigger, and I'm using a lighter color to make that the perimeter, to make the definition of the shape of the diamond. And that is going to dictate exactly the size and the position of the last outer row of diamonds. And then I should have nice even rows. Handling it this way, I should have, I'm going to meet at the top at 12 o'clock with this. So I should get nice even rows of diamonds. Because a lot of times when diamonds are put in like this, since I'm also a jeweler, they're a nice little grid, even grid pattern. They're not so organically placed. They're very deliberately and mechanically placed. Okay, now that I have that row, that's going to determine this last row of diamonds, the outer rim of diamonds, the outer row that has the biggest diamonds on it. And also any shape that I got a little bit off, this gives me a chance to correct it. Even though I gotta probably wait till that dry and then paint in some white. And then also when you're painting wet over wet, sometimes you want to go wetter than what you have there, so you can really paint over it nicely. And with a clear line. I mean, you want to have some clarity to your line. And as it ends up, I'm winding up, ending on like about 7 o'clock here, I guess. But that's just how it ended up. I'm going to try to get an even looking brooch out of this, if I can. Because I started out painting the outer perimeter. And of course, now, you know, I got all these mechanical looking rows. Okay, now I'm going to have to tighten up this once this dries. I mean, it's basically going to be almost impossible to do anything now at this level other than just get the basic modeling of this in. I mean, I can get that much done. And kind of neaten up the geometry of this thing a bit. And then just let this dry, become solid, and then clean it up again later once it is dry. I think I'm going to go back in again with the dark and make the shadow, because somehow that as I neatened it up, that got undefined. I'm going to redefine this shadow. There we go, on that brooch. And make it nice and even like it's supposed to be. Okay, that's good. And I'm not even going to try to soften this because I don't want to mess it up. I don't want to mess the shadow up. I can soften it at a later date. I'm just going to make it a little bit smaller, a little bit thinner than I need to, but I can, in a subsequent layer, I want to tone it up to make it a darker, deeper, richer tone anyway. So that gives me that opportunity. Okay. Okay, that's good. So now that I have that in, I added some more details to that jewelry there, just starting to build that and model that, because I basically just had that blocked. And I haven't worked on the bracelet jewelry yet. Haven't even added the ring that I want to add in, but like I say, everything Everything when it's necessary. Okay, so sometimes, you know, like I say, you're working in a certain area, your fingers are getting places, you're messing stuff up. You just don't want, you've got to let that dry and come back in and get it again. Well, at least I like to do it that way. So I'm just take this opportunity just to soften a few things down. And I don't want to gray it out because it's wet on wet. And sometimes you soften too much. And what you wind up doing is getting your stuff muddy. And I don't want to get anything muddy. Okay. Now what I want to do is I'm going to go into some of this tone in here where I might have gotten it a little dirty. With a little thin glaze wash. Clean that up a little bit. Because when I need to clean, glaze. And what I'm going to do is use my tissue here and just kind of wipe some of that back. It's going to leave just a little bit of a residue of a tone, which is kind of what I want anyway. Just another little piece of glaze added. See, any opportunity that I can get to add some glaze, I'm going to take it. I'm just going to add a little warmth right here in a glaze. And what I'm going to do with this particular glaze is warmth. A lot of times I'm doing this with a paper towel, but a lot of times I like to do this with a rag. And just add some warmth to it. Adds a little warmth. And then I'm going to go, let me go into the white. Because I don't want it to be too warm. I still want it to look the right tone. But just build that up. There we go. And then sometimes you got to take it down if you build it up. Build it up, you take it down. You build it up, you take it down until it's just exactly what you want. Okay, and that's looking pretty good. And like I said, there's tone on this paper towel too. Tone on there too. So it's all good. I added a little too much there, but then I discovered some with the paper towel technique. Add a little shim to the skin, just enough for it, and just take it back. Paper towel blends nice too. And it's just a little glaze technique here. I'm doing a little tiling with that glaze technique. Now, let me look down there and make sure I'm not taking anything off that I don't want to come off. You know, you want to keep stuff on that you like. You don't want to white, because you think it's dry, but it might not be dry from the day before or whatever. So you want to giveth, you want to taketh away, but you don't want to taketh too much of the giveth. Then sometimes you gotta use a towel, then you gotta sable paint that in. Keep it nice. Then you might have to go to a little light as you went to the little dark tone. There we go. Add that little bit more of a layer, build it up. So we're not with just one or two layers of paint, but we have multiples. Multiples built inside of multiples. Okay. Add a little bit more richness to that. Okay. And let me step away again. Take a peek at it. Yeah, I like that. I like that. There is some brown around the brooch, a little bit of a gradation. I think I'm going to add that in also, since I'm around that brooch and working with that. You know, because I'm putting my visual notes in. Okay, now I'm building some color in there, but painting on this new ground, I shall see. Still holding my opinion a little bit. I'm going to use my finger technique to see what that's going to do. Nope, not liking that. Let me go to my darker tone here and retone. See if I get my big old brush here. A big old brush. Doing the brush. Oxidon purple, where are you? Okay, now let me go into that little small area there and first kind of cut that out with a tone. I don't know which brush I use. I think I'm going to use this one. Making sure that I have the right tone, first of all. Okay, and then I'm going to get that little tone kind of established right around that brooch. And then I'm going to drag the tone into the other tone I already have down. Okay, that's good. And do a little blend, slightly bigger brush. Yeah, I guess I can do it with either one. Do it with this one. Brush getting even smaller. Oh my gosh, this brush is getting smaller. Don't know how much I like that brush. I mean, I love the way it paints, but man, it's wearing down too fast. I don't know if I like that. And this is some pretty smooth paint here too. I mean, I don't like the way, and not saying I don't like the way it paints. I don't like the way it's wearing down. It seems like the hairs is just getting crazy small real fast. I mean, I'm going to probably order another one to replace it. But how many paintings is this brush going to give me for the amount of money it costs? Or should I get another one, just let it wear down to this from another brand? Because they seem to make all their brushes the same way. I mean, interesting how these companies make these things. You know, because a lot of times, you know, it's some canvases, it's like sandpaper that you using these little fine brushes, and it's almost like you can hear the brush going like sandpaper. It's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And I hate to say it, my favorite brushes or the best brushes seem to wear down faster than the brushes that don't paint as well. So I think what the companies are doing, they're making the brush so they last, but they don't paint as good. So it's like a little bit of a compromise between the brush that paint good and a brush that wear down too fast. It's like, oh, which one you want? like I said, building up the paint, building up the layers, the patinas, creating a nice painterly effect in there. Putting down some good paint. But at the end of the day, you just want brushes that can paint good. Who cares how fast they burn out? But, you know, like I say, the business end, you want to be able to keep painting. Gotta think of that. Okay, so sit back again. Look at that bit of painting. See what's going down. Yeah, that's going down. Okay, so now the brooch is starting to come forward. And at least the first modeling layer on that little brooch, the first modeling layer on the earrings. There is something else going on with another piece of that earring. There's a complicated earring she has on. There's another piece of earring. There's a different tone behind that I need to look at. Because first of all, I don't even know what the earring, I know what it looks like in a picture, but I really don't know what it looks like. I think I'm going to minimize that earring a little bit. I'm not going to have it as big as it is in the photo that she supplied me, because I want to really bring the emphasis on her face. I want to bring the emphasis on those things. Now I have a little bit of orange underneath her, on her lip, where her finger is, a little bit more orange tone. And you can see I have a little bit more orange tone on her cheek. I'm going to be toning that tone more in to her skin tone on later dates. But for right now, I'm not even, I could wipe it up some, I guess. I mean, because I don't need that much. I think it might be a little too much on that lip. So I'm going to maybe take that down. But and I think I'm going to add just a little bit more modeling on the forearm where the bangles are. And then I'm going to consider, and then I'm going to do a little bit more blending. Then I'm going to consider that enough model for the day to let that dry, to build that up. You know, let that build up. And I think once I finish that little bit on that forearm, I think I'm going to just make a call on that for the day in terms of that modeling layer. Just a few touch-ups here and there on some of the chest area that I was working on. Then I think I'll go on to the snake for the rest of the day. And maybe work on a tiara, and then I might be finished for this session. And then tomorrow, of course, I'm going to come on in here And I'm going to work on it some more on tomorrow. And hopefully what I'll do is I'll get in here tomorrow earlier. All right, let me go paint those areas that I know that I need to hit. Okay. I think it just needs to be dark right there. Just need something darker there. Okay. And then there. I think I'm going to add something darker here on the shoulder too. Just a little something there. Also. Then model off of this to cut this out more so it can pop. And it's building up this tone. It's building it up. And I think what I'm going to do here is just Take some of the same tone I'm working with here, which is a little burnt sienna, a little raw umber, alizarin crimson, and then I'm going to just add a little bit of modeling dark to this side of this forearm. So, and just try to blend it into that lighter tone that I already have established, just to kind of give it a little bit more volume. I want it just to have a little bit more volume. I'm going to take this soft brush now and just kind of knock it down. I'm going to go back to that brush I had. Still has that darker tone in it a little bit. I'm going to just kind of add that in. So I'm going to add in okay, there we go. Okay. I'm going to take a little bit of raw umber, a little bit burnt sienna. Again, I got some gloss in here, but I don't want so much of a hard. I know I got a shadow in there, but I don't want it hard, but I don't want it black. I just want it brown. So I'm going to just hit around this finger a little bit more of a darker tone, and I'm not going to mess with this part yet. What I'm going to do is just find a soft brush and make sure it's clean. This is a little bigger. I don't want it too big. I want it big, but I don't want it too big. I have to back down to this brush. Okay, so you find certain brushes are great to paint, and I guess you just paint on them a lot. I don't know if you wear them down or not, but okay, I'm going to soften that just a little smidge. I really didn't see this before, but I saw it now. So, there we go. Don't really want to mess up that white that I had established. But at the same time, I do want to soften that, so let me put some of that white back in there. Okay, good. Okay. Yeah, I like that better. Now that forearm is more in there and there. Has more presence. So that's pretty good. So now what I'm going to do there is I'm going to hold off. I'm going to do a little bit more softening, and then I'm going to go to the crown, I believe. Just do a little softening, just a couple of little licks right here to kind of soften that. Couple of licks here. There, that's it. That's all I want to do. Before I go to the crown or the snake, I want to just sit back and look just to make sure I do the right thing. Okay, so that's pretty good. Now, either I can go to the crown or I can go to the snake next. I have less development in the crown area. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a couple of adjustments on her, on some modeling in the torso. Then I'm going to go to the crown, since that's less developed than the other area. Okay, just going to bring a little bit of dark just to bring that in, because I was getting cut off a little bit. Okay, and now I'm going to, I think I got enough of that tan color that I can just get this nice soft sable here And just do a little blend in there. Just do a little blend. There we go. Just tap that in. Lock it in. Lock that in. Lock and load it in. There we go. She smooths in nice. Okay, so now I can, no, that's still a little too rigid of a blend right there. I got to smooth it more. There it is. There we go. I think that's about right now. Okay. Of course, I have, once this, I'm going to have another glaze and modeling layer. So this is by no means final, but it gets me to where I need to be. You know? Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to probably now go to the crown. I basically painted the crown by doing reverse painting. I basically painted the hair to reveal the white area of the crown.